5, private training versus public teaching. Appreciate you all for tuning in live or listening to replay. It's always a pleasure to do these episodes. Thank you for tuning in live, listening to replay. So we're gonna go ahead and get into it. It was funny because right before we did the episode today, we were talking to a trustee about the difference between private training and public teaching, and it's so funny because so many people may be able to relate to what's considered free lunch at public school, and there's a difference in classism. As soon as you get in public school, you could tell a parent's a kid's another student's parents tax bracket based off of if they were paying for lunch, or if they got free lunch, or if they got reduced lunch over in the states. And it's so funny, but it's not funny. Is that that's the reality of private training versus public teaching. We remember dealing with some people in our past that they literally never were allowed to go to school and eat public school lunch. And it's so funny because that's so true for so many students. A lot of people, their parents didn't allow them to to eat public school lunch. So it's even more interesting now to see that you know people's parents allow their children to go to school and eat public school lunch for free, or they actually have enough capital at home to send their children to public school and get a paid for lunch. Like, you're actually paying for lunch. I mean, you're actually taking your own lunch to school. So it's interesting to see that, ladies and gentlemen, um, because that is so eloquently stated. If you can go back and think about your childhood, if you went through that experience, which was free lunch, public paying for lunch, or having even a reduced lunch, you could tell the tax bracket your family was in. It was an early form of classism and division, because there were certain students that had to pay full price because the parents were reporting certain money on their taxes. Now the other kids that didn't report, their parents didn't report that they were making a lot of money, that was so their parents could send them to school and they could go to school and get a free lunch. And this goes into, think about public school. It was free, right? Private training is when your parents come out of pocket now and they send you to a private school where you get private training. You learn how to be around private people, people that are willing to pay. That's the difference between the public and the private. See, the public is welfare, the private is you figure it out. Your family either gives it to you or you figure it out. But one way or another, you're going to come out of pocket. You come out of pocket and you pay to play. So today's episode is catered towards the trustees in training, private, we could have put private trustee training, and public employee teaching. Because people in the public have been taught to be dependents, depending on the media, depending on your doctors, depending on everybody but your maker, your creators. The truth. The truth is, there's no one going to save you but yourself in the business environment. The bailouts? What happened to those banks after 2008, 2009 from the subprime crisis? Didn't they create the subprime crisis and they still paid the money back? What happened recently when they were offered the money in 2020? Said, we don't want that money. There's too many intrusive regulations in it. They learned from the first time. The bailouts. See, public teaching teaches you that every time there's some type of disaster in the world, there's going to be a bailout. See, when you go into private trustee training, you learn we will eat when we work, or otherwise we don't have. We don't take handouts in the private. But the public teaching says that There's handouts coming. So, appreciate everybody for tuning in live. Feel free to type into the chat wherever you're listening from. We got Alaska. That already says a lot when you're listening from halfway around the world, anywhere in the world, because the episode is in the replay. But to listen to it live, knowing what time it is in Alaska, we know that you're listening because you care. So feel free to type into the chat where you're listening live from. But private training, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the key things we've been thinking about over the past week or two for trustees and the like. Think about it. On the public side, the public teaching, they tell you it's 4 to 5 entities, right? They tell you it's a LLC. They tell you it's a C Corp. They tell you it's a S Corp. They tell you it's a couple of different little LLs and PPs and all those things. But when you go to the private sector, there's 80 different types of trust or more. Why don't they teach you about that on the public side? How do you know which trust to be in if it's 80 different types of trust? But the damn lawyers, they give you a hard time telling you which one to be in. S Corp, C Corp, LLC. That's the difference between private training and public teaching. That's why you're supposed to enroll in your private education, so you can learn the 80 different entities, so you can learn the truth. It was so interesting to think about that because, hey, think about it. It's 80 different private entities that you can get into, charitable or otherwise. Over 80 different contract names. But on the public side, for the public teaching, they give you 3 or 4. They got the public ones listed on the public websites. Where the private ones listed at? Oh, you got to enroll in your private education with Trust Christian in the Vault. You got to enroll in your private education so you can actually see the facts. So you can be given the facts, not the opinions. We got people that come in Trustee Training and say, well, I'm in the S Corp. I don't know why I'm in the S Corp. My accountant put me in the S Corp. Your accountant put you in the S Corp. But then you're still taxed at the highest rate. Well, you don't want to do the C Corp because you're going to get taxed at the highest rate. You're going to get double taxed in the C Corp. That's what they tell you. This is the common consensus out there. No one said you had to take a salary. Do y'all know who Roy Seabag is? Google Roy Seabag for goldmoney.com. Google Bill Gates. Did Bill Gates take a salary for the past 10 years of Microsoft? No. But you think you need to take a salary. Did you know about Publication 15B? Did you know about fringe benefits? Did you know about net operating loss expenses? Your accountant didn't want to share that with you. Your accountant's job was to help you reduce your liabilities financially. But did they do that? No. They brag. We hear accountants brag on the public side. Yeah, we had our client pay $80,000 in taxes this year. It sounds like Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Well, I paid more in taxes this year. That's the difference between private training and public teaching. Someone bragging about how much they paid in taxes. That's the difference. Appreciate Youngstown, Ohio for tuning in live. Definitely tuning in the replay, Youngstown, Ohio. Hopefully they got something going on out there. Appreciate Callie for tuning in live, listening to replay. See, we're breaking down private training and the public teaching, where they tell you, don't worry about that private sector. You don't have enough money for it. Isn't that what they say in the public? Oh, you got to have millions of dollars to get into that private sector, into that trust stuff. Oh, that's the separator? It's finance? And you don't think it's worth it to pay to play to get into it? Appreciate New Jersey City, New Jersey for tuning in live, listening to replay. Tuning in live, listening to replay. New Jersey City, New Jersey. You don't think it's a difference? You want the free stuff though. You just want to listen to Trust Christian on the Vault in the YouTube, right? You don't want to invest for the consultation. You don't want to invest. You don't want to invest, you want to spend. That's the difference between public teaching and private education? Are you spending money or are you investing money? What's your rate of return? Oh man, Trust Christian, what you mean? I gotta invest? I don't know when I'm gonna get a return on my investment. Investing is risky. Isn't that what they tell you in the public teaching? Investing's risky. In the private, what do they say? They're not looking for a return on the investment. They're looking for the rate. What's the percentage and how fast? That's what it's about. Private training versus public teaching. There is no free lunches in the private, ladies and gentlemen. Get over it. Public teaching says you don't need to read books. It's all on the internet. You don't have to own the physical copy. Private training says if the internet goes down today or tomorrow, you got the private education. You got the Black's Law Dictionary. So when you go in the courtroom, you don't need to pull out your cell phone that doesn't have good reception in the courtroom. You actually have the education right there in your hands. You forgot about hard tangible assets? See, in the public, it says go get Bitcoin. In the private, it says we still know what real savings is, what real education is. Hard tangible assets. Hard tangible assets. But oh no, we got to get on the Bitcoin wave. There's nothing wrong with diversifying the portfolio. But what happens to generational wealth? Is it all on the internet now? Is it all in the cloud? That's where your value's at? How are you in control of something that you're not even in control of? The cloud. Private training says there will always be a room for hard tangible assets. Even though people knock the fiat dollar, why wouldn't they knock the Bitcoin hundreds of years from now? People weren't always using dollars correctly, correct? They were using gold and silver, then gold and silver certificates. Now they're using Federal Reserve notes. Public teaching. Use the Federal Reserve note. Use fiat. Oh no, but the Bitcoin's the savior of your life. How's it the savior of your life is still public? Well, it's private because the ledger and the government's not involved. It's decentralized. It's over the public internet. It's www coin market cap, www Bitcoin whatever, www World Wide Web. That's public, right? Private training says we already know private will always last longer. That's why gold and silver has been pegged. That's why the same people that are saying that Bitcoin should be an asset, the same people that are saying that the dollar is trash, and they want the dollar to go back on the gold standard. Why are you talking about gold and silver? Because it's private training. That's what's private. Well, what about then you got the guys that listen to the vault. Shout out to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Appreciate you for tuning in live, listening to replay. Definitely appreciate Tulsa, Oklahoma. Then you got people that listen to the vote and say, oh no, we just gonna get half the crumbs that fall off the kings and queens table. So we gonna go buy gold and silver ETFs. We gonna go buy the stock. That's public teaching. That's paper. We don't trust in paper. It says in God we trust, and gold and silver we trust. That's the thing that stood the test of time with money. Right? But oh no, we got to get on the trends, the public trends, right? The public teaching. Because you listening to public people. The CPA, the public accountant. What about the attorney? The Bar Association attorney. They're public. They passed the public test. Right? Our mentors in the private, they're private JDs. That means Juris Doctorates. Just because you're a Juris Doctorate doesn't mean you need to pass the bar exam. How are they less competent in law when they're a Juris Doctorate? There are people that just stop at getting a law degree. Ladies and gentlemen, learn to invest in your private education. Invest in yourself. But are you scared to invest in yourself? Are you scared to take risk? In the private training says you have to become an asset manager, not a liability manager. See, in the private training, you learn the difference between assets and liabilities. See, it's common sense in the private. In the public, it's idiosyncrasies. It's people sitting around saying, I can't put one and one together. I can't put two and two together. Well, let's think about this. Let's think of what a public teaching looks like. A public teaching says you own the house, but you still got a mortgage on it. Wow, really? Let's look at that again. You know, in the black community, they got this thing called a remix. So we're going to tell y'all what a remix look like. It's a remix when we say you own the house, but you still have a mortgage. You don't own anything. Why do you think people try to write off interest? Because they're not in control. They're in full liability. The owner's always supposed to write off interest. You're not dealing with the principal. The principal is the real tangible asset. It's the equity. Interest is arbitrary. If you did an early payoff statement, you could knock off interest. But you don't know how to negotiate, do you? Private training teaches you that. That's the difference. So that's why you invest in your private education. That's why you stop waiting. You don't wait for your friends and family in private training. Because public teaching says we all in the same boat. We're not all in the same boat. We're not all created equal. You can look at the public teaching and it'll share that with you. Public school food lunches tell you that we're not created equal. Right? Some people had to pay for school lunch. Some people didn't. We're not created all equal. The private training teaches you that. Because some of us will work while others beg for handouts. Is that honorable to beg for food? Is that honorable to beg for money? Oh, we forgot. You don't want to own your last name. You don't even want to control your last name. Right? See, in the private sector, you get addressed by your last name. It's your family name. It's not about your first name anymore. It's about your last name. It's about the bloodline. It's about generational wealth. We don't talk about you getting the PPE money or whatever it is, PPP money. We talk about you doing something in a downturn. You creating from nothing. From nothing. You create based off your talents and your abilities. We all got talents and abilities. But public teaching says we're not all created equal. So guess what? Hold on. Let's remix that. Public teaching says we're not all created equal. Well, that's the idiosyncrasy side. It says we're not all created equal. So guess what? The one that's doing better needs to give to the one that's not doing good. That's the public teaching. The private training says, look, if you don't work, you don't eat. That's the difference between private training and public teaching. Easy public teaching and private training is public teaching says go get a job. Private training says you got to create out of thin air. See, that's a magic trick. You don't want to do that though, do you? Because you've been publicly taught. You don't want to create out of thin air because then that would make magic real. That would make reality not real anymore. Why? Because public teaching says you can't create out of thin air. Private training says you create from your last name. Your last name is a determining factor on the tools and talents and the gifts that you're bestowed. That's why you have a last name. It caters to your bloodline. It caters to your DNA. It caters to the science, not to the public teaching of fiction. That's the difference between the private training and the public teaching. So, do you want a handout or are you going to create out of thin air? Private training already said you gotta own nothing, control everything. Trust Christian, own nothing, control everything. Why? Because the public teaching says if you own something, you're in the big boy position. You're in the big girl position. Yeah, that means you can be sued out of an asset. That means you can be taxed out of an asset. See, private training says, I don't want to own anything. That's how Donald Trump is able to claim that he only pays $750 even if he did. Why? Because he doesn't own anything. How can he fly around in private jets? How can he wear nice suits? The man has a clothing company. That's the least you can know. But guess what? You think if you have a clothing company you don't pay taxes? Go ask the other entrepreneurs that aren't set up correctly. They're paying big taxes. But you don't know that Donald Trump has his own clothing line? And he only pays $750? See, the public teaching, they tell you that that's true. You got a clothing line that generates millions and billions of dollars a year, but you only pay $750 in tax. That's for the stupid dummies over the internet that want to believe anything that's put out, instead of going to do your fact checks to see how much the clothing company actually paid in taxes. That's the difference. It's the private training, not the public teaching. The private training says, of course, he didn't deal with the tax liability. The company did. But for some odd reason, the public, oh, do you hear that term? Why do you think they have to distinguish it? Because it's teaching. It's not training. Until you wake up and own the position, or until you wake up and get in control of your life, control of your mind, and not let somebody else feed you the fake facts, the fake news, the fake virus. Oh no, I had family members die. Ladies and gentlemen, did you know that heart disease is still the leading reason for why people are dying in the United States in 2020? The number one reason. There's more deaths in 2020 in heart disease. But oh no, this is the one thing that got out of control. Let's not talk about it in the public. It got out of control. Ladies and gentlemen, there are things called bad germs. There are things called bad germs. And sometimes if you're not healthy, a bad germ, it can mess you up. That's why you got to get your immune system up. That's why you got to stay healthy. But the public teaching doesn't want you to know that. The public teaching says we need a vaccine. Oh, really? Private training says stay healthy, eat healthy. You are what you eat. It's common sense. Right? No, it's not that common. Because people are emotional on the public side. See, in the private training, you learn logic is what prevails. In the public teaching, it's emotionalism. You want somebody to take care of you. Well, Trust Christian, what do you mean somebody's not supposed to take care of me? I come from the bottom. Ladies and gentlemen, who do you admire in life? The rappers that are talking about killing people? Or do you admire people that actually have created something in society from nothing? The iPhone wasn't created 50 years ago. The computer wasn't created 100 years ago. These are things that were created out of thin air, out of somebody's mind. The modern day inventions, they were created out of people's mind. We're not saying that theft doesn't happen. People's ideas get stolen, no doubt about it. That's why even copyright and patent still has some shakiness to it. But nevertheless, it's the reality. Private training says you have to copyright your ideas. You have to trademark your ideas. Private teaching says sit down with anybody and tell everybody your idea with no non-disclosure agreement. You just share your ideas with anybody. Private training says there's secret societies. Public teaching says there's no such thing as an enemy. Don't be competitive. Isn't that what they say in the public sector? Oh, don't be competitive. You think Apple's not competing with Samsung? Hold on. Let's remix it again. Do you really believe that Apple is not competing with Samsung? People don't believe that Apple is competing with Samsung. People don't think that they're competing. The globalization of the world, the global market, people still think there's no competition. Oh man, I ain't competing with nobody. I'm competing with myself. And what have you done with your life? What have you achieved? Have you won a gold medal? That's the standard you can measure yourself by. Oh man, Trust Christian said that. I haven't won a gold medal. I just been an employee. Well, what happened to you taking a risk on your ideas, on your loves, on your passions, on your dreams, and on your goals? Did you take a risk on that? Did you invest in the private sector, taking a risk on Trust Christian? Because there's been many that have. But the public teaching says, oh man, I'm just going to listen to Trust Christian over the internet, give the free game out. Hey, look, it's the free internet. I'm listening on YouTube. It's free. Why I can't give it for free? Because you got to invest in your private education. That's why. That's the message. The vault is here to let you know there's a thing called secrets. You got to keep them in your vault. When you go private, you have a vault for your family. It's called private family banking. How come the public teaching didn't teach you about the private training called private family banking? But you still question whether you should invest in your private education. Do you even know how to implement the private family banking strategy? Oh no, we got people, they list to the vault. Oh man, I'm listed to the vault. I'm going to go get the private family banking, but I'm not going to be in trust. Why would you not have it in the correct position? What, you going to have it in a personal position? That's public teaching. That's public teaching, having it in a personal position. Private training says you have everything in EINs. It's business, it's not personal. It's always business, it's never personal. That's the public teaching philosophy, is everything's personal. Have it in your name. What about the company's Trust Christian? I'm not in Trust Christian. Right? You got to invest in your private education. Christian at trustchristian.com. If you want to reach out, we know we don't always put out the email. It's in the daggone it's in the section where you can, what is that? The description. Christian at Trust Christian for emails. People type into the episode and type into the comments later on, and they think that by them typing into the comments that they're going to get their questions answered. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody's scenario is private. You have to get your your questions answered privately, so it can actually be addressed in a real professional business manner. So you know that you're not shortchanged. But you want the free answers though. You want to type into the comments after the episode's over, right? That's public teaching. Private training says you put this in your calendar every week and you make it on time to type into the chat live. We can address the questions live, but at the same time, there's still private training you have to get. But people want the public teaching because it's free, because it's easy. People want things that are easy. It's nothing easy in life. It's barely easy to breathe right now. The airways supposedly are messed up. The airways, right? You got to wear a mask, right? The airways are messed up, right? Public teaching. Private training says you might have to invest in an air filter for your house. You might have to invest in your health. Not depend on the government, not depend on the healthcare system they already had. Public teaching says it's okay for the public to mess up, right? They could make mistakes. They could tell you something and then you could see that the person's paid off and then they got to correct it. That's the public teaching. The private sector says you got to measure 20 times and cut once. You got to make sure when you put out something that you care about the other lives that you're dealing with. Because it's business, it's not personal. If you put out a defective product, you might get a class action lawsuit. Why do you think these companies have set aside funds, slush funds? Why do you think they have insurance? Because they've learned private training. The insurance industry's been around for 300 to 500 years. That's the private training. Everybody in the private sector knows you have to have insurance. Why? Because it wouldn't be called insurance if it wasn't insurance. It's the earliest form of banking. Private family banking. But public teaching says No, no, no. Depend on the government. Social Security insurance, Medicare insurance, right? And then when you got to find out that you still got to pay half the expenses on your Medicare expenses, you wonder why you even contributed. That's the difference. Private training versus public teaching. Are you going to invest? That's the question. And your private training, your private trustee training to manage your family's estate, are you going to have an estate? Or you going to wait till you die and then your family is not going to be able to put the estate together? Ladies and gentlemen, do y'all know that Aretha Franklin, this is a well-known singer, generated tons of money? We could go through the list of actors and singers, these people that the public teaching tell them they doing well in life. Why would you write your will on toilet paper? Why would you write your will on paper? That can be changed, that can be fudged. Because you didn't have private training, you had public teaching. See, private training looks like Steve Jobs. When Steve Jobs died, the estate was in trust. His wife, his children, they inherited everything in trust. When you hear the elites say that they aren't giving wealth to their children, they're in trust. They have private training. So when you hear them say they're not giving wealth to their children, that's private training. You don't give the wealth to your children. But public teaching says when you die, you're trying to give it to your kids. You're trying to give it to your grandkids because you're trying to make them liable. Ownership incurs liability, right? Inheritance incurs liability, right? That's the difference. See, it's easy to talk about this when you're in the private sector. But it's not easy when you don't know what you don't know, because all you had was public education. All you had was public teaching. When are you going to invest in your private education? When the government gives you the money to do it? So then they can come back and say you owed them for that too? Student loans is one of the highest debts in the United States outside of mortgages. How many people do you know are trying to pay back their student loans? Because if they was, they wouldn't be making a minimum payment. But they are making a minimum payment because they think it was a waste of their time. They're laden in student debt. They found out that it was a hoax. They found out that if the government stopped subsidizing it, the cost would actually be lower. Oh, did we say that? That's what you learn in private training. In public teaching, they tell you that, hey, the government's going to give you a grant, and that's why you go to school for free. But then remember you had to pay for lunch in school, you had reduced lunch in school, you had the free lunch in school. What happened to the kids that didn't get the good grades and didn't get the scholarship? They got the reduced education. They got to pay full price for the education. See, it's actually inverse the older you get. Appreciate Cleveland, Ohio, for tuning in live, listening in a replay. Wow, we got Greece listening in live. Greece listening in live. Appreciate you. It's 3 a.m. in Greece. This is called People That Want the Information Live. Appreciate you. Feel free to type into the chat, Greece. Any questions you have just for being up at 3 a.m. We're definitely not night nappers either. So 3 a.m. is a time we're usually up as well at the vault because we're global. See, private training tells you we're in the global economy. Public teaching says, oh, just focus on your city, focus on your state, focus on where you live at. All the rest of the losers around you, they're not making any money, right? But what about those people over in China that if they had the opportunity to get into free market capitalism, they would eat your lunch because they're willing to work 16-hour days. While the Americans are saying, hey, you got to work from home. We're in the work from home society, so you only got to work 4 hours a day. Then you're going to take a 4-hour lunch break like they do over in Greece. You get a siesta, and then you get back, and then you don't go back to work. That's what it's dinner time. 8 hours. 8 hours. You got 4 hours of work and 4 hours of siesta, and then you just go on. You go to the movies with your friends. You go out to eat dinner with your friends. You're in a discounted society. Oh, well, guess what? What happened to those people that got degrees that you ride in an Uber with right now? What did this one lady say she had? She had a speech pathologist degree. You all can Google what the average cost of a speech pathologist degree costs in the United States. Why were you driving Uber at 70 years old? Public teaching. You didn't have private training. You didn't take a risk on yourself. So you didn't have your finances set up. Oh, we love to hear that excuse. Oh, I'm just driving Uber to have something to do with my day. Sure you are. You're older now. Your legs should be hurting a little bit. Why are you in the car all day? Because they had public teaching. They didn't have private training. Who wants to live the gig society after 45, after 40? The public teaching people do. The ones that thought they were going to get straight A's in school, and now when you hit the real world, they still don't know how to balance a balance sheet. They don't know how to balance it. They don't want to look at the numbers every month. They want to go off their feelings because they're emotional from public teaching. Private training says you got to put everything in a spreadsheet. How much time are you allocating every week to everything? How much money are you allocating towards leisure? How much money are you allocating towards your private education? How much money are you allocating towards your food? How much money are you allocating? Because you're an asset manager. The money is a commodity. It's an asset. It's like gold and silver. It's an asset. Paper's just not paper now. Even though you have faith in that paper. Ooh, dangerous thing. You have faith in that paper. Hold on. So people try to knock the dollar for having faith in the dollar. Do you have faith in Bitcoin? Well, I got a key, Trust Christian. You take it out and then the money's on the key. Hey, you always got to hook it up to the internet. Just know that. So now you're putting even more faith in something invisible. You don't even have hard, tangible paper in front of you no more. You have digital currency. And you don't see that as a problem. Why do you think a lot of older asset managers see the wave that's coming? But oh no, cryptocurrency, it's the future, man. It's the everything. Guess what? That's what they were saying when the Federal Reserves and the central banks were getting started in 1913. These people are going to help us create liquidity. That's what they did, right? Now people 100 years later are crying about the central banks. The central banks have too much power. The Federal Reserve has too much power. The United States has been around for 275 years plus. The central banks aren't 200 years old. Do you do your history? Do you study history? Oh, okay. What about the central banks around the world? See, that's private training. You study history. In the public, you take opinions. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Feel free to type into the chat where you're listening live from, city or state. That's pretty much it. I mean, when you think about the facts, the private training makes you focus on the facts in your life, not focus on how you feel, because you feel like you should be doing better in life. Everybody feels like they should be doing it better in life. People in private training think they feel like they should be doing better in life. But it's not about how you feel, it's about what you think. Because your thoughts have power too. Hold on, your thoughts are invisible though, right? Right, just like your emotions. But people put more power into their emotions because they don't know that their thoughts create their emotions. It's like the word happy. That's a thought. It's hard to be sad when you're happy. And conversely, it's hard to be happy when you're sad. When you feel like crap. When you feel like you should be better. When you feel like. Because you're not in control of your thoughts. Your thoughts is what control your feelings and your actions. So we got to correct our thinking. And the only way you can do that is in private trustee training. Not in public teaching. Simple as that. We appreciate everybody throughout the years that have gone through private trustee training. because we know you took that step forward. That's what you got to do. You got to take the steps forward. And if you're in the public, we already know what you're doing. You're waiting for the handouts. You're waiting for the freebies. There's no free lunch, remember? In adult life, there is no free lunch. Free lunch? Oh, but public school would train people to think, you're going to get something on discount. It's reduced lunch in life. There ain't even a reduced lunch in life. It's either you pay full price or you get out of the kitchen. That's the difference. Pay to play. It takes money to make money. With Trust Christian, where am I going to get the money from? You got to create. Bottom line. This message is for the private trustees in training. This message is for people that are investing in their private training, not looking to get more public teaching and be led astray. Appreciate you all for tuning in live, listening to replay. Feel free to reach out Christian at Trust Christian for a consultation. Trustee Training, Christian at TrustChristian.com. Appreciate you all more than you all know it. Do you all appreciate the vault more than the vault appreciates you? The vault does this for you. Because people in trust deal with people in trust. Did you know that? People that invest in themselves deal with people that invest in themselves. Public teaching people say you can't even get your family member to get in trustee training with you. That's what public teaching tells you. Your public teaching tells you your family won't even get in a trustee training with you. They won't even invest in education with you. They won't even go into business with you because you can't, what? Here's the word, trust them. So of course we appreciate you, the ones that invested in their private trustee training, in their private training. Because the public teaching says you can't trust. But when you come into private trustee training, you learn fidelity. You learn trusteeship. Appreciate you all for tuning in live, listening to replay. Feel free to reach out Christian at TrustChristian.com. Peace.